Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to the Morning Update Show. I am so glad. I know Big O is glad, man. We got Joey Wieser on set, man.
Hi.
You know what I'm saying?
Thank you for having
Joey,
me, Trey.
welcome.
Thank you. Good to see you guys again.
Absolutely.
Yo, and Joey didn't disappoint, and I still have a lot of my old gear from the protest as well, and I think you can also confirm this. I bet when you put that jacket back on, you still had like pepper spray residue and everything, right? You wash it 5-6 times, don't.
I had to get this out of the storage closet and wrinkle it off. And when I was walking over here, remember it's heat activated.
Yes,
So in the
UV
sun,
activated.
my neck started
Starts
burning up.
Oh,
So did that for y'all. Love you guys.
oh man.
Well, welcome back to the Morning Update Show. It's literally been almost a year. The last time we had you, we were right across the street there at the bunker.
Yep.
When we checked in with you, a few things I wanted to talk about. But the first thing before we talk about what's happened since, you know what I'm saying. The first thing I want to talk to you about is something that's really kind of important to me, was like the mental impacts and the mental tolls. And I think that somebody like me and you, we kind of impacted a little bit differently than other people who were just documenting. Some people just had their camera on us, whatever. And, it was clear you're very much, like your title said, activist and everything else. Mia's out there, you know what I'm saying, as media, trying to be as objective as possible, different viewpoints, the same thing. But the whole point is, if I didn't talk to so many people, I probably wouldn't be as emotionally impacted. But talking to like hundreds and hundreds of people in interviews, man, you know what I'm saying? It puts like an extra layer on it, as opposed to if I was just sitting there with a camera the whole time.
Well, right, and people want journalists to be objective and unbiased as possible, which I totally get. But meanwhile, we've got police officer unions and guilds endorsing Donald Trump, for example, right? He's an actual fascist dictator. So I struggle with this idea of being completely neutral. One, I don't believe that that's fully possible. But two, I'm out here with a lens and a perspective and a bias, and I just
Well, the point I was getting at is you've never been shy about your perspective.
Right.
That's the thing. No one is coming to watch Joey Weiser stream because they're like, oh, well, man, this is very objective.
I sure hope not. Yeah. Wrong crowd.
Because people would hit me and they'd be like, man, you're not doing this. And I'd be like, man, go to Joey's stream.
Yeah.
All right, so look, we want to play this clip. This was actually from July 6th of 2020. So imagine this was 5 days after the CHOP got cleared, and we sat down and we talked about mental health impacts of the protests.
How did that being out there, like, one, because like you intentionally put yourself in danger because you were streaming and you knew like what could happen out there, but still, how did all that impact you?
Yeah, well, that's the big joke, right? Is that white people run towards danger, right, rather than away from it. So I would say I don't think I realized that it was impacting me as much as it was until maybe a week later, because like you said, we were out here every day with some nights upwards of 300 plus of those blast balls. And the scary thing is you don't know if it's going to be the tear gas one when it's ignited and it just releases a lot of smoke, or if it's the one that's going to land on your foot that's going to blow up. And I had both land on me at different times, so you don't know whether to run or to pick it up and toss it back, right? So just having that uncertainty be in our vases ever present all the time for a sustained period of time, upwards of, what was it, a week and a half, 2 weeks, it definitely took a toll. And one of the ways in which that really revealed itself to me was through my sleep or lack thereof, because what I saw myself having to deal with, even when I would go home after the crazy nights out here, was, excuse me, I don't mean to use the word crazy. I'm trying to remove ableist language from my everyday. So I would rather say exhilarating or threatening or scary. But anyway, I would go to home and try to go to bed, and I couldn't fall asleep. Or I would get to sleep, and then I would have dreams. I know the first one was about an active shooter situation. It was that night that I was out here. I was interviewing Councilmember Shama Sawant, asking her about what she thought of the situation, and next thing you know, I'm getting messages and messages and messages about how there was somebody just tried to shoot one of the protesters. That's when that car came barreling in. And so that's actually only maybe one of three, I think, active shooter dreams that I've had. I had one actually last night. And so waking up with night sweats, 4th of July was particularly difficult because everywhere around us, it boom, boom, boom. And for those of you who maybe weren't on the ground, one of the things that we were hearing was that fireworks were used as a deterrent potentially to um, perhaps distract from a shooting that might be happening somewhere else, right around us. So to make, kind of throw us off so we don't know where it actually came from. So I hear fireworks and I automatically associate it with gunfire, not just because it sounds like gunfire, but because quite literally it was used in tandem to sort of avoid suspicion or what have you. So it's been a really interesting adjustment. I will admit I had a lot of privilege for the last 28 years when it came to 4th of July. I don't have any family that's in the military. I don't know anyone personally that suffers from PTSD that's very vocal with me about it. So as far as I was concerned, it didn't really exist. But this 4th of July was very different, and I now understand.
This is really, really transparent, to be honest, vulnerable of you to put yourself out there like that, Joey. And my question to you is, as you were experiencing these things, and it sounds like really for the first time, so much of this, coming onto you, the mechanisms that you use to get through, what were some of those for you in that time?
I'm really grateful that I had a roommate and I could just shoot the shit with him
Yeah.
and get a lot of my anxiety out and talk it out what we've experienced because he was there with me through a lot of what happened, right? So having that dialogue back and forth was really cathartic and therapeutic that way. But I do want to acknowledge, right, like centering my whiteness is not what I'm trying to do. There are so many people within the Black community that experience this kind of thing for generations, right? So it was a opportunity for perspective sharing. One of my favorite tweets to come out of the protest was nothing will change until we stop seeing or until we start seeing racism as a white problem to solve rather than a black
Yes.
issue to empathize with, right?
Yeah.
So I think I was able to have that empathy, right? And now it's, I mean, not even close, but for a little bit of time. And now it's like, okay, what are we going to do to solve it? Because
Yeah.
this sucks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it took a few months, but the night terrors have stopped. So,
That's
but
good.
yeah,
I mean, part of it is, one more thing. I'm just going to toss it over to O, but I think so much of this is exactly what you talk about. When I'm always encouraging people to see themselves as a part of the solution,
right,
that's what I'm talking about, right?
right,
When it's on white people to say, you know what, I'm going to be addressing these acts of white supremacy, of white privilege, of racism in my own family, in my friend group, in my with my colleagues, because there's a lot that happens outside of black folks' purview,
right,
and ultimately that is the ideology that allow those are the opportunities that allow the
right,
ideology to persist.
right.
So I love that you were able to walk away with that, and also I'm glad to hear that your night terrors are stopped. That's
Thank you,
serious,
thank you,
man.
thank you. It's kind of clumsy showing up as a white person in a racial justice movement, right? Because you don't necessarily know where your allyship fits in and how you show up in ways that don't overstep or
Yeah.
overpower or shadow. So one of the ways I see my work is just trying to build the platform and then pass the mic,
Yeah.
right? Okay, if folks want to speak up, here you go, and there's your opportunity. But at the end of the day, I'm going to be able to reach out to white folks in my community, people who look like me, people who will probably only listen to the cause if it comes from someone like me, right? So that's kind of the way I try to find a role here.
Hey, it's a good lane to be in, Joey,
Yeah,
honestly, and we need more folks like you in that lane. Thank
appreciate
you
you.
for that.
Yeah,
Oh,
Yeah, like uh, a few things. I think that yeah. Let me circle back around. First of all, how do you think that I guess you would say live streamers or smaller media companies like people through David into being live he's got a news platform he's had for years. People just hadn't heard of it before. You know what I'm saying? People hadn't heard of Converge. We actually, it's our fifth year. Then we also had people who were live streamers, who came out. But how do you think the live streamers and the smaller media impacted the Seattle protest as far as people actually being able to see what's going on and talking to as many voices?
I think that's a great question, right? This last protest season was the first time I'd seen the live streamer really put the viewer at home in the driver's seat where they could interact with folks on the ground, especially during COVID, where so many people are at home looking for something to consume, wanting to get involved in some kind of way. Um, Before, you really didn't see a lot of mainstream news organizations, Como, Cairo, King, Q, whatever, doing anything like that in that way. Maybe helicopter chopper live streams or something of a car chase, but you wouldn't really see boots on the ground live streams. And I would notice maybe about a month in with all these little media guys doing the live streams and getting such viewership, right? Thousands and thousands and thousands of views and comments. Next thing you know, Q13, Como, Cairo, they're out here doing live streams. They're following the marches just like we were in the same format. So I think in many ways we kind of paved the way.
Yeah, well, definitely. Like, I would say people being on the ground, the live stream impacted media here in Seattle in so many different ways. Um, but also it going through it with the people who were going through it built all kinds of bond. There's so many protesters and different groups of people I might not necessarily agree with ideologically, but you know what? We still talk. We still because we all went through it together. We were all in the gas together. We were all, you know, hit with these projectiles together and everything else. And I think that that's as well where the smaller media, and we see that here this week where you're getting people early on, you know, Monday, TK, not talking to anybody else. You know, Dan Gregory yesterday. I don't know if you saw that
Oh, I
interview,
saw it. Yep.
which was very powerful, and some everything else. What are some of the takeaways when we look back here 1 year, and you know we'll continue to look forward? But what are some of the takeaways you think from the 2020 protests?
Yeah, definitely. I joked and said maybe this is just what community looks like, or maybe it's trauma bonding. It's probably trauma bonding, or a little bit of both. Um, I, One of the takeaways for me is that sustained protests are effective, right? Boots on the ground. The live streams, you're able to galvanize, thousands of people at once with the viewers at home to email their council members, to call into city council meetings, to write emails to the governor, you name it. We've had just unprecedented amount of civic engagement, I think, over this last year, flooding people's inboxes, signing petitions, etc., in a way that really we haven't been able to do before. So that digital organizing has been super powerful. I mean, so much so we got the youth jail is going to close down by 2025. The Northwest Immigrant Detention Center is going to be shut down by the same year. Obviously, people want that to be moved up sooner, and I agree with that. But it wouldn't have happened without the sustained protests, right? People in the streets every single day, led by people like TK, um, Everyday Marchers, the Black Action Coalition. Just there is so much learning after this last year that I think we take for granted. I think as activists, we tend to focus on what's wrong, what's not working, what needs to be improved upon, and we forget to celebrate the little wins along the way. But if you really take a zoomed out perspective, we got 18% defund from the Seattle police. We knew 50 wasn't going to happen. That's why you aim high, shoot for the moon, you land among the stars. None of this would have happened without the sustained protest every single night. And if even one Black life is saved from being able to hold our police officers accountable, I would say that it was worth it.
Well,
Right?
no, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, real quick. Now you live on Capitol Hill,
Mm-hmm.
so man, what's it like looking back now, like as a resident of what happened, especially in between the months of July, June, July, early August?
Well, the people that participate in all of this, they're still here. They're still around us, right? They still live in this community. And I think that's one of the beautiful reminders is that when I walk around, especially if I wear this jacket, I'll usually get, which I don't do very often these days, but if I do, someone will usually come up to me and they'll be like, oh my gosh, I recognize you from the protest. I was there. And then they'll have some kind of story to share with me about what they went through. These people still work at the coffee shop. They still work at the record store. They're still here. We just need that call to action. And unfortunately, in this country, police officers kill about 1,100 people a year. We're about 500 so far in 2021. And I think the conviction rate's around maybe 11 officers in a year. So we're going to have more work to do. We just got to wait for that, that galvanizing moment. But yeah, I look back at this year and I think it was a beautiful thing that happened, but it's a distant memory. And yet it's like the most hazy, but yet visceral thing I've ever gone through. So it's a weird conundrum, but I'm glad it happened.
Well, you kind of touched on this a bit, but I really want to go back to something in terms of what got you out here in the first place, right? I mean, you're talking about, activism, allyship. what that looks like. But there had to be a moment for you where it was like, I don't care. I'm out there and I'm going to be out there every day. I'm going to be giving my energy to this. What was that thought for you in that process? Walk us through that a little bit.
Well, we all saw the video of George Floyd, right? I mean, when he called up for his mom, people at home were crying. I certainly was crying. And not knowing what to do about it was probably the most frustrating part. But then you go to the events that happened downtown on that Saturday, May 30th, and then the following day walking up here, and it's like, man, we got to do something.
Yeah.
And I think people, came to the streets for George Floyd, but we stayed because of the Seattle Police Department.
Yeah.
And that was really the driver and the motivating factor. And the live stream happened by accident. I mean, I'd never done that before. But then having all these people buying in and asking, well, can you please go back out there? What's happening? What's happening? I felt like it was my civic duty to be back out there and, try to see what I can bring and to the movement. And everybody has a superpower. And if mine is just pulling out my phone and keeping the camera steady while getting hit with glass balls, and, so be it. That's my cross to bear. But a lot of people have gone through worse. So I'm just doing my part.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I remember, we met right there on the Western Barricade, and I had 3-4% in my phone, and you had that's how it was. He didn't know anybody. Who's got a power bank? This and that. He was like, "Yo, I got a power bank." Charge. We like most people were unprepared.
Right.
We had no idea how ugly it was gonna get. Before we let you go, and we want to make some acknowledgments tomorrow, but before we let you go, I see there that you have the button on your jacket. Summer Taylor. I'll let you say her name.
Summer Taylor. Summer Taylor was killed on the highway. Omar, you remember you were actually on the highway that night. I got there shortly after, so thankfully I spared myself the traumatic visuals, but we've all seen that video and it's just heartbreaking. And I wear the button just to commemorate and remind myself what we went through as a community. It's important not to forget.
Yeah.
Summer season.
All year.
Joey Wieser, thank you for joining us on the Morning Update show and for going into the storage and pulling out the vintage jacket and everything.
Thanks so much, Joey.
Thank you guys for having me.